7 minutes past 8 this morning. Will O'Callaghan is with us to bring us up to date on 24 hours of some developments, really, with regards to the women's Inter-Pros, where where an Instagram video ended up showing where the Connacht women were getting changed before the Inter-Pro at the weekend in Energy Park. Will, what happened yesterday that actually has moved the story on quite a bit?
Yeah, morning lads. I guess the biggest development last evening was the IRFU statement which came out last night, where they confirmed that an investigation is now underway into the circumstances which saw Connacht having to change beside those bins outside Energy Park at the weekend. They said, the RFU, that they were appalled by the situation and that they found it entirely unacceptable where Connacht had to change beforehand. And they've now opened discussions with both Leinster and Connacht to talk about the circumstances around what happened at the weekend. That statement from the RFU had followed a statement that was put out by the Connacht women's rugby team yesterday afternoon, where they had initially accepted Leinster and the RFU's apology at the weekend, but they were looking for a formal investigation into the circumstances around it, particularly because it's been a little bit of back and forth around why it ended up that they were in the situation that they were getting tugged out there. And the suggestion over the last couple of days was the Connacht were a little bit earlier than expected in arriving to Dublin, so therefore this temporary area was put in place, and that's where they were told that they had to change ahead of the final round of the Interpro games. Connacht admitted in their statement yesterday that their performance against Ulster in the last round of fixtures on Saturday was affected by the circumstances of where they had to change before the game too. So as things stand now, Ger, an RFU investigation is underway, and we had some of the male players speak about the situation, including the Irish captain Johnny Sexton yesterday as well.
Yeah, well, obviously those issues haven't been great, but I think everyone that has been involved has apologised and said it won't happen again, and you got to take their word for it. And I think that the women's game has gone from strength to strength over the last while, but hopefully moments like that won't shadow all the good stuff that's been going on. So I can't speak. I'm not involved in their camp, so I can't speak for everything that's going on. But I hope that they are. I've got two young daughters myself that I hope will be involved in sport as they grow older, and I hope that they'll be looked after like I have been throughout my career.
That was the Ireland rugby captain Johnny Sexton speaking on the hard shoulder on News Talk yesterday afternoon. It was also the launch chair of the United Rugby Championship at the Aviva Stadium yesterday. One of the big announcements coming out of that Leinster will have 75% capacity for their opening fixture against the Bulls in the competition. That means 38,000 fans will be able to attend. They will have to be either vaccine certified, that they've had it, or they'll have to show that they've recovered from COVID-19 in the last 6 months. But I asked Gary Ringrose, the returning Ireland and Leinster centre star, about the situation last weekend.
Yeah, I actually saw a video of it on Instagram, and it's obviously pretty ridiculous, and there was clearly a massive mix. But I can't imagine it be a mistake that'll ever or shouldn't ever be made again. So. Yeah, I don't really know the ins and outs of it, other than it was a massive mistake and one that shouldn't have happened, but I've no doubt, as I said, it won't happen again.
See, the thing is that this wasn't the first time that it happened, right? We now know that it happened the week previous to this, that it wasn't just a one-off, that it was a two-off, that it had happened before that. And the other thing that happened this week was that the Connacht players have been told not to talk about this, and then they came out yesterday and issued the statement. So them issuing the statement is actually quite a significant moment in all this. It's actually, you know what, we're not just going to shut up. We're going to continue talking about this. So was there stronger support for them?
Yeah, look, we also heard from Paul Boyle from Connacht. Paul became a full Ireland international, the back row, this summer when he came on against the USA. And he said, Gerard, that the Connacht men's team had conversations about what happened at the weekend for their women's side.
We spoke about it ourselves in the change room, that we wouldn't put up for it, and it's not good enough. I suppose from a bigger level, the apology has been made. Hopefully it won't happen again. Hopefully there's dressing rooms available and the COVID stuff goes away. But if a scenario like that was to happen again, hopefully the powers that be make the right decision and don't have the guys there.
Do you think that male rugby players need to support their female counterparts more?
Whenever there's a Connacht women's game on, we go and support them. But yeah, 100%. I think the game is growing. There's huge support behind it. I was watching the women's game against Spain there on Monday, and it was a really enjoyable game. The women's game is only getting bigger, so I think the more support it gets, the better.
It's a really interesting question there from Sinead Kazan, because if you think back to what happened with the Irish football team, Seamus Coleman certainly lent his support. It took a while for the men's football team to properly come out and support the women, but when they did it full-throated, and it led to a parity of esteem and equal pay. That's not quite. It seemed more like the lads were on message there, that, you know, it was a mistake, it's been apologised for. That seemed to be practiced almost, that it was, maybe it's a coincidence that everybody said it was a mistake, it's been apologised for, and we're, you know, it's definitely not going to happen again. It seems, you know, maybe it's a coincidence that everybody had the same line, or maybe that was the official line coming out from the IRFU press people.
Yeah, look, it's very similar to the RFU line from the weekend, and we have to remember that these players are employees of the IRFU, where they're contracted through their provinces, so therefore they're likely to be on message. I think it's going to be intriguing when the players from the women's teams are able to speak a little bit more freely about this, because we're looking at amateur players across the board from last weekend, and that's one of the reasons that they found themselves in the circumstance that they did. Albeit there are so many other alternative areas where they could have been able to tog out around Energia Park and Donnybrook at the weekend that just never have ended up where they were. But these players, if they're being told not to speak, many of them don't have to be concerned by Irish contracts, because one of the main reasons that we're talking about Ireland being a little bit undercooked, Ger, against Spain in the first of the World Cup qualifiers this week, is that the Irish players were all kept in camp and not released to play for the Interprovincial Series this year, like with the exception of a few former Irish players and, say, the likes of Anna Capus, who was dropped from the squad and not picked for the World Cup qualifiers, playing for Munster in their success against Leinster last weekend. They can speak reasonably freely about it, but they've been told to keep stum at least until this investigation is completed. I wonder if in a few weeks' time you might get a Connacht player or two who will speak out entirely about what happened at the weekend. I mean, they've already kind of broken that omerta anyway by whoever created the video and released it at the weekend. Yeah,
look, I know what Rugby Players Ireland are going to say is that they represent the professionals in the game, but you would have thought that the interprovincials would be a recruitment ground for Rugby Players Ireland, and that they would be kind of out representing them in lieu of the fact that they're professionals, that they don't actually have a body organising them. And I'm on their website at the moment, and I see all the stuff that they're teaching kindness. They're talking about helping to provide smart money habits program. There's highlights on their press releases. There's a statement about the retirement of Philip Brown. Reaction to but there's nothing about this.
Yeah, which is a little bit surprising, maybe not surprising at the same time, because you said they will say that they represent the players who are playing professionally within the country, but this year was meant to be a real shop window for the Interprovincial Series. It's, you know, improved in recent seasons, and notwithstanding the fact that the Irish players weren't available, which diluted maybe the quality of players that were on the pitch over the last few weekends for the series, it was being shown on TG Carr. It was getting a little bit more mainstream attention. It is a chance for players to impress further down the line and maybe to get themselves a contract to play for the 15s or 7s team in the future. And really all of the focus has been on what happened last weekend and the unacceptable conditions that the players had. But I think a male voice on this from the Irish players carries a lot of weight. Like, if Johnny Sexton comes out and makes a very firm statement on what happened last weekend, that probably gets more coverage than a press release being put out by the Connacht women's team. So solidarity, it's amazing what a difference it can make if some of the male players come out and speak very strongly. I thought Paul Boyle did speak fairly well on the situation there, and it was interesting to see that the Connacht men's team actually sat down and had a conversation about it, that it wasn't just a case of them going, all right, last weekend was unacceptable, let's just move on. They were actually debating that in the dressing room as they were getting ready for the start of the new season.
Yeah, so again, just to go back to that, if the players don't feel confident enough, given that they are under contract to the IRFU, although they should feel confident enough to say this is wrong and our organisation needs to change this and we need to be agents of change in that, then the Players Union should be coming out. The Rugby Players Ireland should be coming out. There's always been a suspicion that Rugby Players Ireland was a bit close to the IRFU, and the fact that their most recent statement is about the retirement of the chief executive of the IRFU as opposed to the appalling conditions that the women's teams were putting up with in the Interprovincial would certainly give those people who believe that reason to be suspicious. So look, I don't know, you definitely would feel like the Players Union needs to do more and the players need to do more about this, otherwise nothing changes.
Yeah, look, it's not like they'd be massively speaking out against their employers. I'm just looking at the statement here on OTBSports.com from last night. And if the RFU saying, we confirm that we're appalled by the situation, we've already commenced a review.
A week late,
of the
though, that's the only thing. They got shamed into that, really.
Yeah, look, it's 4 days late. They probably should have been much stronger. And I think one of the criticisms about the RFU at the weekend was that they put out a message that was effectively aligned with Leinster's initial statement about what happened last Saturday, as opposed to maybe going a little bit more strongly. The wording is definitely stronger from the RFU on Wednesday in the middle of the week than it was on Saturday and Sunday when this was a real live issue.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's partly why the Connacht women's team have looked to push the issue a bit more. I know they probably didn't want to stir the boat too much on Sunday when they said, look, we accept that mistakes were made and that there'll be learnings from this. Now they want something slightly more formal. I wonder if them going a bit stronger yesterday actually led from the reaction that we had. And I think as well, when it comes to the players, like if Johnny Sexton or one key male player in the Irish team speaks out strongly about this, would he really be sanctioned by the RFU for it?
I don't think so.
Like, there might be a message, but he can speak freely.
Well, I don't know. Here's the thing. You don't know. Actually, I don't know. Maybe the IRFU, maybe as an organisation, will bear a grudge for a long period of time. And if you want to be involved at a senior level when you're finished, you might not feel free to speak about it. Maybe it is the type of organisation. And that, I think, would be, that would be in keeping with many Irish sports organisations where they bear grudges and you can't really rock the boat. So I don't know. It's a good question. And that's all the more reason why Rugby Players Ireland should have been leading the charge here, saying this is unacceptable. These are future members of ours, and even if they're not, this is not really how we treat people.
And look, that's a united front, and it's a difficult one as well, Ger, when it comes to these amateur players. If they're getting involved in these squads because they've aspirations of going further, they could well be blackballed if they're the ones who come out and speak out against us.
Okay, well, good stuff. Thanks a million for bringing us all that. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Will O'Callaghan stuff there. You can read it on the OTB Sports app, or, of course, you can read it on OTBSports.com.